So IRDA has taken the steps of making the insurance cover available for everybody, especially when it comes to general insurance, trying to protect the rural sector. Most of the families suffered from the lack of capital, lack of insurance cover, plus they do not have the ideology of running the business in the same way that has been proposed. You are wantedly getting into some trouble, you are trying to do some malicious activity with that of the animal, then the insurance coverage will not be provided to you at any cost. Good morning and welcome to the session 3 in Unit 5 in Principles and Practice of General Insurance, where we are going to speak about a very important topic called as the rural insurance cover. Now, all of us know that India has got its majority of population in rural sector, and we do need to cover that business in order to make a progress. So let's move forward and try to understand the rural insurance cover. The Indian law states that insurance companies should be accommodative of persons in the rural sector or social sector, especially about the persons in economically vulnerable or the backward classes of society altogether. So what happens here is that it becomes very important for all the workers in unorganized and in the informal sectors to think about it. And this in terms of the IRDA Acts of the Insurance Act of 1938 and other factors, this becomes very important that you provide an insurance cover to each and every citizen of this country. Especially when I talk about the rural sector, there needs to be a kind of understanding, a kind of factor through which we are able to cover them, we are able to give them some sort of benefit so that their life as well as their assets are completely covered. Now, moving forward, let us try to understand in terms of how the percentage of business starts coming in for the insurance, especially from the rural sector. Now, it defines that the percentage of business that insurance companies are expected to put aside for persons in categories mentioned above, that especially when we talk about the rural sector and the economically weaker sector. Plus, the IRDA also has tried to accommodate two sections of the Insurance Act, making it compulsory for the insurers who offer general insurance support to business in the rural sector. So IRDA has taken the steps of making the insurance cover available for everybody, especially when it comes to general insurance, trying to protect the rural sector as far as possible. So that's definitely a very important step that we can talk about. The other thing is that IRDA has also specified a minimum of 2% for the total gross premium during the first financial year, a minimum of 3% of the gross premium in the second financial year, and a minimum of 5% on the gross premium and the third year and the additional 5 years. So what has been trying to do here is that the plan has been created in such a manner that they are not trying to put too much of pressure onto the rural sector, and at the same time they have tried to specify the minimum percentage cover altogether during that particular gross premium. And as it starts going up the financial year, in the minimum percentage has been constantly increasing so that they are able to give a protective cover, a protective support to the rural business at any given point of time. So overall, you will be able to understand these factors very clearly, where they have been able to give all kinds of promotion, all kinds of benefits in terms of covering up the insurance, in terms of covering up the business in the long run. Followed by why the rural scheme insurance is needed. The main objective of the program is to make sure that the rural farmers and people who are involved, the families who are involved, are being provided with working capital assistance in certain form of income generating assets. Institutional credits and subsidies are also need to be provided. The rural India is always a place which has been avoided by most of the country, especially in India when I like to talk about. Why? Because there are several times when you would start seeing that the rural India does not get all the benefits like that of the urban India, where there are big companies, lot of options are available, a wide range of credit facilities connectivity is available, and now that kind of thing makes the business move further. But when you come down to the rural sector, most of the families suffered from the lack of capital, lack of insurance cover, plus they do not have the ideology of running the business in the same way that has been proposed. So that is why I would always say that the main objective here is to see that they are able to provide insurance cover to every single person, to every single limit as far as possible. And this is mandatory. This has to be given at all instances so that the business can run smoothly. Followed by the factor called as the beneficiaries of IRDP projects will be given, will be protected with some specific act. I would always like to talk about those special insurance schemes, and the policies come with a reduced rate of premium and procedures for claim. Now, when you look into the insurance coverage that has been spoken about for the people in the rural sector altogether, it becomes very, very important for all of us to understand, to grow and take it forward. Why? Because many times we might find that the insurance sector is not being giving equal importance, equal kind of exposure for the people in the rural versus that of the urban. So what we are trying to do here is that we are looking in for projects, we are looking in for facilities where we can give those people an opportunity to grow, a subjectivity to grow, an area to grow with, so that they are able to continue, they are able to function as one entity altogether, and they're able to build business successfully, steadily in the long run. Followed by the benefits that we need to start looking into in terms of the rural sector. The first benefit that I would definitely like to talk about is the sub-animals, including honeybee, silkworm, etc. Now, most of the rural sector is highly dependent upon horticulture, and then when you talk about the actuaries business, or when you talk about the rearing of poultry and animals. So definitely you need to have some sort of insurance cover, which will be a very, very positive thing that tries to cover into factors like your honeybee, silkworm, or the rearing kind of facility, because if any damage happens to them, the livelihood of the farmers will come under question mark. So it is very important that you give subjectivity to the animals, you give preference to the animals, you give coverage in terms of that ratio. Followed by the livestock factor, including sheep, cattle, goat, etc. Because these are all the rearing animals which have been used for wool, for meat, and for other purposes. And there is a huge amount of potential in terms of earning which the farmers take into position by rearing this group of animals. So it is mandatory that you give importance to the livestock altogether. Now, the same thing when we talk about property, for example, in terms of agriculture pump set, land, or any kind of assets that are related to agriculture, they need to be covered using this factor. Followed by the plantation horticulture crops, including grapes, all these kind of things, rubber trees, etc., have to be protected so that the rubber trees and the plantation will be able to get a kind of protection, kind of gear altogether in terms of the the beneficiary, or if there's going to be any damages or anything, there needs to be a protection that has to be given. Now, if you look into areas like Kerala, especially if you start looking into Wayanad, or if you start looking into Chikmagalur or Madikeri, all these hill stations, even Ooty for that matter, there are a lot of plantations that grow in terms of coffee, in terms of rubber, or in terms of cardamom, spices, and other things, for which you need a specific insurance that covers, that helps the farmers in terms if the plantation goes for a complete waste. Followed by the accidental insurance, which is also be given. That is what we call it as the Gramin accident plan. So in case if something goes wrong with the person, something untoward happens to the person by an accident or some untoward facility, you also have a coverage that comes in factor so that you can protect the life of the farmer. Moving further, what is not being covered? It is found that cattle have been though they have been through the following factors, the insurer will not cover the cost. It is found that the cattle factor, when we are talking about, have been through any of this following factor, that is through overloading, then we are not going to give it. Now let's look into the factors of where we will not be able to give you the insurance. One thing is the overloading, willful or malicious injury or neglect, unskillful treatment. Suppose you are wantedly causing an injury to the cattle, you are wantedly getting into some trouble, you are trying to do some malicious activity with that of the animal, then the insurance coverage will not be provided to you at any cost. So that is a very, very important point to be noted here. The next thing is that deliberate slaughter of animals will not be included in cases where the animals is being killed due to incurable suffering of the animal. So if there is going to be any kind of diseases or there's a deliberate slaughter of that animal, then the insurance cover is not going to come into picture. This also does not include cases where animals are slaughtered by the order of a lawfully constituted authority. So anywhere, if there is going to be a willful disaster that is happening to the animal, a willful attack that is happening to the animal, then we are not going to cover it through insurance. Followed by the animal will not be covered in terms if it is contracted with a disease and it was an accident before the insurance period. So before taking the insurance, if the animal has undergone some treatment, it is contacted with some disease, then we are not going to give an insurance cover. Clandestine sale or theft of insured animal will not be covered. So in any case, if there's going to be a theft of the animal, the insurance is not going to back it up. Risk involved while transporting the animal by air and sea will not be covered. Similarly, there is certain districts in India where they see that the cattle is being subjected to disease. For example, the fluoro pneumonia in the insured caste of Sibsagar districts of Assam or Lakhimpur. In these places, insurance will not be given because those districts are already affected by diseases. So it is a very well known factor that in case if the animal is going to come from that, it was prone to all kind of disease. So we will not be giving insurance cover to these particular areas. Followed by the other policies that the insurance have cover for. Farmers package insurance, where we try to give a complete package, where we try to give the farmer a complete understanding of how he can go further in terms of the insurance. Hut insurance, which is trying to cover his housing, the basic facility. The Gramin personal accident, so anything happens to the farmer due to an accident or due to any other factors, you get it. The animal driven cart insurance, which is also very, very important, that is coming in. Or when we talk about bullock carts and other kind of things, the animal driven cart insurance. The cycle in rickshaw policy, which is also very, very important, that has been spoken up today. And the lift irrigation insurance. The lift irrigation insurance is one kind where we are talking about the irrigation facilities, the land facilities, the farming facilities that are coming up. For that also we have an insurance coverage package. Followed by the failed well insurance. Suppose you have been getting into bore well, you have been getting into insurance factor. Now that's a failed well, and if it is not working out well, we are going to talk about the failed well insurance factor. Starting up with the agricultural pump set and other factors that we are talking about. Horticulture and plantations. Honeybee insurance, which is also being spoken about today. The sericulture, which is coming up in a very big way. Aquaculture, which is also quite important for all of us to know. Poultry insurance, which is coming up in another important format. The sheep and goat insurance, which is also looked forward in terms of the coverage altogether. So these are all the format, these are all the pictures that you can talk about in terms of covering up the insurance, in terms of understanding how the insurance is really going to help people move further and gather the complete coverage. So if you talk about horticulture, honeybee, sericulture, aquaculture, these are all the rearing facilities. These are all the kinds of insurance that we can talk about, because these are all natural formats of business that has been followed across in the rural sector, which actually makes a lot of difference in terms of understanding, in terms of the rural agro business altogether. Followed by rural insurance claim procedure. If the insured animal dies, then the policyholder must intimate the news immediately to the insurer. He or she must also provide insurer with a duly filled claim form, death certificate from a qualified veterinarian, post-mortem examination if it is needed, the ear tag of the animal, and also make sure that the value of the animal has been established as required. So just look at the formalities that we are talking about. If an animal dies today, the person should immediately intimate it. It should be qualified by a certified veterinarian saying that yes, the animal has died due to the natural reasons and there has not been any other cause. In case if you want a post-mortem report, the ear tag of the animal, these days you will be seeing that most of the animals will have a ear tag which is in yellow color, and it must also be established what is the value of the animal that has been established as required in the policy. So with all these factors done only, they will be possible to issue you an insurance coverage altogether, and you will be able to successfully claim in case of any untoward incident. With this, I come to the conclusion of the session. I believe that this particular session was of great interest and of a great resource to you. In the upcoming session, we are going to speak about the engineering coverage and the insurance factor. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.